And welcome to this week's episode here of the UFO Show on the Area 51 Sports Network, brought to you by bet99.com. Make sure to head over to area51sportsnetwork.com/betting for a bet back bonus on your first bet. We have been away for a while. Personally, I've been in a different country. Sometimes life gets busy, but we're back. And Andy, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. Um, we got some exciting stuff going on here in the Lower Mainland with the World Under 17 start tournament going on right now. We got the World Cup starting not next week, but in 2 weeks, and the Connor Bedard showcase is coming through BC in 2 weeks as well. So lots of excitement going on in the sports world. And let's start with something else that's going through the Lower Mainland right now, and that is BC Lions fever. I know that the CFL is not everybody's cup of tea. Some people don't like it or not, but it's kind of hard. Even if you're not a big fan of the CFL, it's kind of hard not to get wrapped up into the CFL mania going on and what Amar Dolman's done with this BC Lions team.
Yeah, it's been impressive. I mean, they're one win away from the Grey Cup, right? So I think they're fairly sizable underdogs. I think they're at plus 150 this week. Winnipeg's at minus 213. I mean, Winnipeg's I think very clearly the best team in the CFL, but BC Lions have Nathan Rourke, and even if he's not 100%, he's shown that he can win games. So if you're looking to make money, I'd probably bet on Winnipeg. But if you like taking underdogs and upsets, I don't hate the BC Lions angle.
Yeah, this is an interesting game because if people didn't know, Nathan Rourke he was out for I believe 7 games this year, and he only made his return to the lineup in the last game of the season, which he didn't even play the full game. He looked really good against Calgary last week, but that also had to do with Calgary's quarterback play being terrible and the BC Lions defense just, stuffing them on third down consistently and not like giving them anything. But this is a different beast with Winnipeg. And we also have to put into perspective that this game is going to be played in Winnipeg. Um, Last week's game was played in BC. How is Nathan Rourke going to, react to getting hit with his injury when it's below freezing? That's another perspective that we have to play into here. Now, as far as we know, Winnipeg's weather isn't that bad, but it's still going to be around that freezing point, around that negative freezing point. So, uh, you know, as you said, Andy, yeah, the smart bet is probably to put money on Winnipeg, but this BC Lions team has shown time and time again this year that they can win games even when Nathan Rourke is not in the lineup.
Yeah, I don't follow the CFL a ton, but like you said, there's a big difference between playing in -5 or -10 or however cold it's going to be in inside a dome stadium, right? So if Rourke has to scramble around the pocket a little bit, and if he gets hit a few times on his foot, his ankle there, and it's cold, it could things could go south in a hurry. And all due respect to the other quarterbacks on the roster for BC, but I don't think they can win a game single-handedly, excuse me, like Rourke can.
So let's jump over to the East, and we'll touch on a little bit about this game. Montreal versus Toronto. This game is in Toronto. They are the favorites at -193. Montreal's a weird team because they've had quite a few. They had the East in general is very weird because it's very clear that the West is a stronger team, is a stronger division. The West was very good against the East this year. It's been like that for the last couple years. We didn't get a crossover, which was surprising, but Montreal, they have a lot of momentum right now coming in. Toronto, they didn't really, they won the East, but they didn't really look super dominant in the East this year. Like So this game, I feel like even though it's a 136 plus for Montreal and 193 for Toronto, that this is a game that you can put money on Montreal and feel kind of good about that, especially with how they handled Hamilton last week.
Yeah, I mean, in this one, I can't say I've watched a ton of Eastern CFL football. Obviously Toronto's a better team. They're favored. They're at home. Again, it's one of those things where in these big games, I tend to stick with the favorites and the home team only because they do, they have one less thing to battle, right? Montreal's got to battle a better team. They got to battle home crowd. I mean, it's not a huge home crowd in Toronto, but there should be, some fans there. So for me, I'd probably take Toronto in this one, but that's not really based on any sort of insider knowledge I'd have. More so just playing the odds in this case.
And reminder for everybody, so these two teams, 2 wins difference. Toronto had 11, Montreal had 9. Montreal actually outscored Toronto overall this year, 476 to 443. And Montreal did have a positive record on the road. Toronto had a positive record at home. So this one sets up to be a high scoring game for sure. So that's your CFL wrap up for the week here. But let's jump over to the NFL here. We got some big games. We'll start off with some of these boosted odds that we have for tonight's Carolina Atlanta game, and then we'll try to run through some of the big name games on the schedule for this weekend. If my Bet 99, here we go. Now it's working again. Okay, so boosted odds for tonight. So Marcus Mariota over 158 passing yards and the Falcons to win. That's boosted from 235 to 285. What do you think about this? If Marcus Mariota, first off, you got to have Marcus Mariota have a decent game, and the Falcons have to beat the Panthers.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Falcons will win. I'm not worried about that part. The part I'm concerned about is the passing yards from Mariota. He's been good sort of outside the pocket. Atlanta seems to have established a bit of a running game. Brian Burns is still a big factor of Carolina's defense in the pass rush. That said, 158 isn't a super high margin. It's like 53 yards a quarter or something, whatever it breaks out to. So plus 285, I think there's good value there. I would probably make that bet.
So I'm guessing that you're not going with the Panthers. The Panthers wins. We have Chuba Hubbard anytime touchdown scorer plus Panthers win at 365, or PJ Walker over 166 plus Panthers win at 350. So I'm guessing you're not leaning on either one of those.
Yeah, I'm not a big PJ Walker guy. I think he's been very up and down. Obviously, I think it was last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, he had that Hail Mary to tie the game to DJ Moore. That's kind of his only standout highlight that I can remember. Listen, Carolina's not a good football team. They don't really have any skill position players outside DJ Moore. The quarterback's a mess. They traded away McCaffrey. They traded away Robbie Anderson. I just think Atlanta's the better team. So anything involving a Panthers win, I'd probably stay away from.
And now this is an interesting one. Marcus Mariota, anytime touchdown scorer at 300. Now, for people who might be a little bit confused, this is not a Marcus Mariota passing touchdown. This is a rushing or a receiving touchdown. So do you think that Marcus Mariota can get a rushing touchdown, or do you think it's going to be he's going to stay in the pocket and give it off to Cordell Patterson as much as he can?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely that potential. Like I said, part of what makes Atlanta's offense, I think, a little bit creative is that Mariota can use his legs. So, do I expect him to run 35 yards for a touchdown? Probably not, but I could see him, from the 5-yard line or something, running one in. So I think you said it was plus 300.
Yes.
That seems like pretty good odds. So I'd probably make that bet as well.
So if you want to just take Atlanta on the money line here, so the line is 2.5, but if you want to take them on the money line, it is minus 139. So they are, they are the favorite, but they're not like a gigantic favorite. They're still a pretty good favorite, but they're not like, as we talked about, like a BC versus Winnipeg favorite. So you can make a little bit of money if you do bet Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I would bet Atlanta. I think they're the better team here.
But let's jump to that's the Thursday nighter that gets started in about an hour. Let's jump to the Munich game. We got the Seattle Seahawks versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, this is a line that's moved a lot. I feel like right now it's at Buccaneers at -3, and they have the favorite at -145, Seahawks at +130. Now, how much of that is the Tom Brady factor? Because I think it's fair to say that if you looked at both teams overall this year, you would argue that the Seahawks should probably be the favorite.
Yeah, I'm surprised the spread is that big. I mean, when I look at these teams and their records, I think they're probably pretty even. You know, Geno Smith, we're at what, week 9 now, and he's still playing at an elite level. So I don't think you can say that it's sort of a mirage or a facade here. And Tom Brady, opposite, hasn't really figured it out to be the elite quarterback where we've always thought. The one thing that does sort of concern me about the Seahawks team is still their run defense. Tampa obviously is changing up their running backs a little bit. Fournette is apparently going to be the backup to start the game. But he's a guy, when he gets going, he can really cause some problems. So, plus 130 odds for the Seahawks to win seems like pretty good value when you consider this isn't truly a home game for Tampa. Like you mentioned, it is in Germany. So, obviously lots of travel for both teams, but more of a neutral site game. So in these games, I tend to take the value play here, and that's Seahawks plus 130.
Next up, we got Minnesota versus Buffalo. Now, this is two of the top teams in the NFL this year. Minnesota's a weird team. Everybody knows Michael Irvin talked about how Kirk Cousins is going to be the MVP at the beginning of the year. But they're at plus 160. Buffalo's at minus 180. Now, an interesting wrinkle into this game is that Josh Allen hasn't been practicing this week, and he does have an injury. So if you're a bettor, the smart move right now might be to put money on Minnesota to win this game on the money line, because but if it is announced that Josh Allen is not playing, that line is going to change instantly.
Yeah, I agree. I would be on Minnesota simply because, like you said, you're not going to get better value if it turns out that Allen is out. Even if Josh Allen plays, I have serious concerns about how effective he can be throwing the ball deep. Obviously an elbow injury is, not the worst case scenario, but not good either for somebody who makes their living throwing a ball, right? So, listen, Minnesota is, I think they're 7-1. They haven't beat a ton of good teams, but they also have 7 wins, right? So, they're not a bad football team here. With a healthy Josh Allen, I think the Bills are clearly probably the favorite, but with Allen's health in question, I'd be all over Minnesota at plus 160 simply for the value here. If Allen doesn't play, I like the Vikings' chances to win, but even if Allen does play, I still expect that line to shift a little bit because I don't think he would be 100%. So I'd be on Minnesota plus 160.
And as you know, they don't ask how you win games. They just ask how many wins you have at the end of the year.
That's right.
So let's jump into, we'll call it the tire fire game of the week here. Indianapolis and the Las Vegas Raiders. So with the Raiders, you have Hunter Renfrew just went on injury reserve. They're a disaster on and off the field. They just lost Jonathan Abraham or put him on waivers. So, that's a whole situation. Their defense can't stop anybody. But then you have the Indianapolis, who fired their coach and replaced him with Jeff Saturday, who hasn't called a play or hasn't coached a team above high school before. I know that this is going to be an interesting game. They do have the Raiders at minus 220, which I don't think is unexpected. But what do we expect from this game, do you think?
Yeah, on first blush, I like the Raiders. Like you said, Indianapolis seems to have no idea where they're going. Jonathan Taylor's had a rough year. He's been banged up. They have Sam Erlinger, I think, is going to start again. Jeff Saturday, like you mentioned, is first time coaching a game above high school. Their offensive coordinators never called plays before. Like, it just seems like they're a mess. However, I do think there is something to be said for Indianapolis going to Las Vegas as an underdog with this new coach. There's no pressure on the team. You know, everybody expects them to lose. I think they can maybe rally around Jeff Saturday. And let's be honest, the Raiders are not good. They started 0-4, maybe even 0-5. I can't remember. They got shut out by New Orleans a couple weeks ago. Like, you know, I still probably would take the Raiders on this money line to win, but Colts at plus 190 is very good value. And, you know, if there's a sneaky upset this week, like I mentioned, I think the Colts could get the new coach bump here. So I don't hate the plus 190 value for the Colts either.
And important to note, if the Raiders are up by 17, it actually would be beneficial to put money on the opposition, because they have given up 17 or more point leads in 3 games this year, and we're in week 9.
It's crazy. Like, you think they've played 8 games, or I think 7 games they've had a bye. You know, basically half of them they've given up a 3-score lead, like you said. So, you know, again, it goes to show that even if the Raiders seem to be under control in this game, you know, I don't know if you can say they actually have it under control, because they seem to find new and creative ways to blow this game every week.
So let's jump into a game that you'll be watching this week. We got the Cowboys and the Packers. Now the Cowboys are at minus 210. Packers are at plus 185. I know that you've been frustrated with the Packers play. Everybody's been frustrated with Packers play so far this year. Do you think that Aaron Rodgers can pull off one of these vintage performances against Dallas, you know, a team that he's had success against in his career?
I don't. I mean, when you look at the injuries that Green Bay has, their best defensive player, probably Rashawn Gary, is on IR now with a torn ACL. They have no healthy receivers. You know, Dobbs has been ruled out. Cobb is out. Christian Watson is 50-50 to play. You know, Sammy Watkins, even when he is in the game, has no idea what he's doing. Like, and Aaron Jones might not play. He's in questionable. Like, Dallas is just so far the superior team. You know, Micah Parsons is in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year again. You know, I think all the injuries that Green Bay has and the amount of dysfunction that's going around this team, I think Dallas is going to win in a blowout here. I'm actually looking at the alternate point line. Dallas minus 10.5 points plays out at plus 185. So, you know, that's 3 scores basically to win that bet. I could see this game getting out of hand very quick. So I would be taking Dallas minus 10.5 points in this game. I don't think this is going to be close, and I don't think you need to watch the second half of this game, because it might be a complete blowout.
Okay, yeah, not a good sign here for the Green Bay Packers. You know, maybe they'll finally draft a receiver with their high pick this year, or they'll just go and draft a backup quarterback. Who knows? You never know with the Green Bay Packers when it comes to the draft.
I mean, the way this is going, like if they get into the top 5 and one of those quarterbacks is there, I think you have to take Stroud or I'm blanking on the other guy's name, Bryce Young. So, I mean, I know you joke about taking another quarterback, but honestly, it might end up happening, because every sign points to this probably being the last year for Rodgers. So if you can get an elite quarterback like Stroud or Bryce Young, I think you have to take that chance.
So let's jump over here to one of the games that actually, you know, we're in week 9, but this has severe playoff implications in it. We got the LA Rams and the Arizona Cardinals. Now, for people who don't know, LA 3-5, Arizona's at 3-6. So a loss here could end, even though we are only in week 9, based off of how the Seahawks are doing, based off of how the NFC East is doing. Um, and yeah, it's really the NFC East that's causing a problem here. But a loss by either Arizona or LA could knock them out of the playoff race here. Um, we have LA Rams are a slight favorite at home at -120. Arizona's at +110. I think that the safe bet here is the LA Rams because Arizona, even though they have, guys like Roby Anderson and Hopkins, and on defense you got JJ Watt and Buda Baker. Like Arizona is the perfect storm of. They're kind of like the Las Vegas Raiders. Like on paper, they look like they're one of the best teams in the league, and it just never works out.
Yeah, Arizona's been a weird team to figure out for the last 3-4 years. Like you said, they on paper they seem to have all the talent and all the right spots, and they can never put it together. I think it was last year they started out 8-0 or 9-0 or something, and had a collapse down the stretch, right? So, listen, the best player in this game for either team is Cooper Kupp. Second best player in the game for either team is probably Aaron Donald. They both play for LA. I think that's all the justification I need. LA's at home. They know that if they're going to make the playoffs, like you mentioned, they need to have this game. So I would take the LA Rams.
But with the LA Rams, there's also problems there. You have the whole Cam Akers situation. They have no running game essentially. They have no passing game really. If you look at it, if the ball's not going to Cooper Kupp, it just doesn't happen. Like they can't move the ball without Cooper Kupp putting up 10 to 12 receptions a game. So luckily the LA Rams have that strong defense, but even that is starting to bend and break a little bit. So this is in my mind, this is a matchup where this is a get right matchup. Winner stays in the playoff race. The loser, it might be better to try and focus on that top 5 pick at this point.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, like you said, both teams have major flaws and questions. Matt Stafford has not looked good at all this year for the LA Rams. So, yeah, to be honest, I don't hate the Cardinals pick, but at +110, I just don't see enough value there to justify taking that risk. So, if you want to take the Cardinals, I believe they probably have a 50-50 shot at winning this game. But if I were to bet on this one, I'd be taking the Rams simply because of the best players thing I just outlined.
So let's jump to the last game of the week, the Monday Nighter. Now, usually we don't talk about games that are, blowouts, potential blowouts. Like the Philadelphia Eagles are at -475 to win this game and stay 9-0. But I think that line now, I think the Eagles are the better team here. But this is a division game. Washington would love to play spoiler and put that +1 loss on the Eagles. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it might be worth it from a money perspective to put a couple dollars on a +400 Washington team, because this game just has that feeling like this could be the week that the Eagles lose.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, every logic would say Philadelphia is going to win, and I still think Philadelphia will win. But at +400 in the NFL, anytime you can get those odds, I agree. I think it's probably worth a little bit of money simply because the payoff is so big. And listen, Washington's not a good team, but since they changed to Taylor Heineke, they've looked a little more dangerous, consistent on offense. Excuse me, their defense is, still is what it is, but let's be honest here. Philadelphia hasn't exactly had the hardest road to be 8-0 or 9-0 or whatever they are right now, right? So, like I said, anytime you can go +400 on a team, I like those odds simply because, like you said, if the unexpected happens, you can get a big payday out of it.
Yeah, and let's not forget here that if the playoffs started today, I believe that Washington wouldn't be in the playoffs just yet, but they would be fighting for that. They're at 4-5, so they're the 9th ranked team in the NFC right now. So they would be fighting for a playoff spot. Like, yeah, the Eagles are perfect on this, but this is this is a must-win game for Washington.
It is a must-win game for Washington. Much like it's probably a must-win game for LA and the Cardinals, right? So, I mean, if you look at the seventh seed, that final spot in the playoffs, I think it's the 49ers right now at 4-4. San Francisco is probably better than a 4-4 team, but you look ahead of them and it's the Giants at 6-2, it's the Cowboys at 6-2, right? So, there's a sizable gap between that last playoff spot and the next couple teams. So, I mean, if Washington wants to keep themselves in that playoff conversation, they have to have this one.
So let's finish this off here. We're already a little bit into the season, so I'm gonna ask you some bets here. Let's go with the comeback player of the year award. Now, right now, the betting odd favorite is Geno Smith at minus 124. You also got Saquon Barkley plus 150, and then it kind of tailors off after that. Do you think Geno Smith is the comeback player of the year in the NFL this year?
It's tough to say because, by definition, Geno Smith isn't coming back from anything, right? Like, he was healthy last year. He was just a backup, whereas Saquon Barkley, had that knee injury and he basically missed all of last season and part of the season before. So, for me, I'd probably have to bet on Saquon Barkley simply because I think he fits the definition of comeback player a little more, precisely, I guess you could say. And I think that kind of stuff will happen will matter to voters of this award. And the other thing too is, as good as Geno Smith has been, there's still that persona that it's Geno Smith, right? And I don't know. I don't feel confident that the voters are going to respect what Geno Smith has actually done simply because of how his career has played out to this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's kind of hard to bet. Like, we have to get in the mind of the voters, and that's always very complicated because, a lot of people had Tom Brady as the MVP last year, and Aaron Rodgers comes out as the favorite. So, it's always tough to get into the mind of the voters and figure out exactly what way they're leaning when it comes to the awards. So for Coach of the Year, we got Philadelphia's Nick Sirianni at minus 134. Then we got Kevin O'Connell of the Minnesota Vikings. And then you got this interesting, tier below of Robert Saleh, who's off to a great start with the New York Jets. And then you got Pete Carroll at plus 800 with the Seahawks. And then Brian Daboll of the New York Giants at plus 800. So do you think, one of those reaches at plus 800 or plus 840 for Saleh is the better bet here?
I do, yeah. I like what Dable has done with the Giants. I mean, like we just talked about a few minutes ago, they're pretty much in the playoff picture right now. It'd have to be a pretty big collapse for them not to at least make it as a wild card. They've beaten some decent teams. For you look at the team and the lack of talent and resources they had going into the year and what they've been able to do, with the roster they have, I think Dable's done a very good job coaching that team. And, they also play in a division with Philadelphia and Dallas, right? So it's not like the Jets who've had some cupcake wins and a soft schedule. Like the Giants are in probably the toughest division in football this year, and they're 6-2. So I like Brian Daboll to win Coach of the Year. Excuse me.
Yeah, I think that's a good bet. Defensive player, it looks like it's going to be Micah Parsons unless he gets an injury. That one, if you put the money on maybe Nick Bosa, maybe Judon, but it looks like it will be Parsons barring an injury. So I don't think we have to go too deep on that one. But the offensive player is an interesting one because remember, this is not MVP. Usually what they do is they give MVP out, and then whoever doesn't win the MVP gets the offensive player of the year. It's around there. But we have some interesting names here at the top of the betting. We got Jalen Hurts at plus 300, Tyreek Hill at plus 300, and then you got Lamar Jackson at plus 1,000, Justin Jefferson at plus 1,000, and Cooper Kupp at plus 1,200. Now, there's no favorite here. So do you think that Tyreek Hill has done enough to warrant a offensive player of the year award?
I do, yeah. I mean, the way the MVP in the NFL usually works, it goes to the quarterback. You know, I think Jalen Hurts is, I don't know. Depends who you talk to. He's either the favorite or second in line for NFL MVP. And like you mentioned, if you win NFL MVP, you usually don't win Offensive Player of the Year. So, listen, Tyreek Hill has completely transformed that Dolphins offense. He's made a legitimate, real, you know, watchable team. Again, another team that's in the playoff hunt is the Dolphins. So I think Tyreek Hill is probably the best bet simply because he does not play quarterback.
Yeah, I think Tyreek Hill, especially because he's been successful without Tua as well, definitely helps his case. But I think Lamar Jackson definitely has a shot, especially if he continues the way he has played. That would be an interesting bet to place for sure if you want one of those long odds. So let's wrap up here. We're almost halfway through the season. So your Super Bowl winner, Andy, who do you have?
Yeah, beginning of the year, I think I picked the Baltimore Ravens. I still like Baltimore. I know they haven't had the greatest start to the season, but like you mentioned, Lamar Jackson is starting to play better. They found an effective running game with the three backs they have in Jackson. The defense isn't great, but I think it's good enough to win. And if you look at the AFC, I mean, Buffalo with if Josh Allen has heard that, I think torpedoes their chances. And I like the way that the Ravens line up versus Kansas City. So I'm taking Baltimore. How about you?
So Baltimore's at plus 1,300. I'm gonna I have a hard time betting against Mahomes. He's at there. Kansas City's at plus 520. They're in a they haven't been super impressive yet, but I have a hard time. Mahomes I feel like is going to become the next Brady, and that it's going to be stupid to bet against him. And I just feel like betting on an NFC team this year is not necessarily the smartest decision because that league is just so top heavy that we saw Buffalo lose to Miami. Like the teams are at the top and even in the middle are arguably better in the NFC than they are in the AFC this year. So I feel
Yeah.
like if you're betting on an NFC team, you might have some injuries by the end of the year. So that might open up the gate for an AFC team like Kansas City.
Yeah, I
Or
agree
Baltimore,
with
as you mentioned. Yeah.
I agree with what you're saying. I mean, the only counter I would have is that because the NFC is so weak, there's not really much competition to get to the Super Bowl, right? Whereas in the AFC, like we just mentioned, we could see Buffalo if Allen's healthy, Kansas City, Baltimore, even a team like Miami, if they can get hot, I could see all those teams making a run. Whereas the NFC, it's really, to me, it's Eagles, Vikings, and if you want to give an outside shot to the Cowboys, you could, but AFC definitely has the better teams, like you mentioned, more depth for sure.
Yeah. One last question before we wrap up. How excited are you for this documentary about the 2000 Baltimore Ravens that is supposedly dropping on Netflix, I think in January?
Yeah, I think it comes out just after the new year. Very interested. I'll be very interested to see what they go through and how it's done. If you remember, Baltimore 2000 was actually the original year of Hard Knocks. So you can kind of, if you haven't watched it yet, I'd recommend go back and watch Hard Knocks. You can kind of see their build up to the season, and then this documentary is supposed to kind of go through their season, their defense, and ultimately their Super Bowl wins. So it could be a cool continuation of the story that started 20 years ago.
Never forget Trent Dilfer, arguably one of the most questionable quarterbacks to ever win a Super Bowl.
Yes, Trent Dilfer is the example that people like to use when they point to not having an elite quarterback to win a championship. Right? It's he's kind of the NHL version of the 2019 St. Louis Blues. And, just because it happened once, people think it's repeatable. And if you look at Super Bowls winners since then, there's been nobody really in Trent Dilfer's class that's come close to winning the Super Bowl.
Yes. That year, he had 1,500 yards, 12 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. Yeah, that is the epitome of the defense carried you. Like, I don't think that you're gonna have another situation where a defense is that dominant that they can make up for, a quarterback like that. Like, he had 112 yards and 4 interceptions in the Super Bowl, and they still won 34-7.
Yeah.
Oh no, sorry, that was Kerry Collins.
Thing, right?
Dilfer had 153 yards and a touchdown, which, I mean, from a yards perspective, is like you scored 34 points and your quarterback had 150 yards and a touchdown. Like, yeah, that's all you really need to know.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's why people say the 2000 Ravens are the best defense of all time, right? I mean, you look at what they had to work with on the offensive side of the ball, and they knew if they went down probably 3 scores, they weren't winning that game, right? And they managed to win a Super Bowl despite that. So, yeah, like I said, it'll be a very interesting watch for sure.
Yeah. So that will do it for this week's episode of the UFO Show here on the Area 51 Sports Network. Now, we will be back next week. Next week, if you do have any questions about the World Cup, we will try to, dive into some of the matchups that are going on with a focus on Canada. I believe that it won't be next week, but the week after, we'll talk a little bit more CFL when the Grey Cup comes on. But yeah, once again, thank you for watching, and we hope that you join us again next week here on the UFO Show on the Area 51 Sports Network.